Inheritance doesn't always reveal wealth. Sometimes, it reveals the truth. My name is Camille Donovan, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because I need to ask you, has your own mother ever treated you like a footnote at your father's table? Like a placeholder until her favorite showed up? It was a Thursday. Rain tapped against the windows like it knew what was coming. The will had been read. Not in a grand lawyer's office with mahogany chairs and glass water jugs like in the movies. No, just in my mother's dining room. A room that still smelled like the roast I made for my father the last Thanksgiving before his heart attack. The lawyer had already left. And now only family remained, if you could even call it that. I sat at the edge of the table, quiet, still. Across from me, my younger sister Chloe was grinning like she'd just won a prize at a raffle. Her new fiancé squeezed her hand under the table. Mom sat at the head as always, wearing pearls she hadn't earned and sipping from the wine glass I bought her last Christmas, the one she never thanked me for. That's when she put her hand on the will. Not metaphorically. Literally. She leaned forward, her palm flat over the paper like it was her crown. "You won't get a penny, Camille," she said. Her voice was sugar-coated venom. "Dad's decision stands. The house, the savings, the stocks, all go to Chloe. That's what he wanted." I didn't speak. "Not yet," she went on, twisting the knife like she'd practiced this speech in front of a mirror. "You always said you didn't care about money. So now's your chance to prove it." Chloe giggled, a soft, smug sound that filled the silence like static. Everyone stared at me, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the scene, waiting for me to beg, cry, shout. But I didn't do any of those things. I simply placed my fork down on the edge of my plate. Then my knife. Deliberate. Graceful. I looked directly at my mother and said, "Then you won't get anything from me." The air shifted. Her smile faltered. But I didn't flinch. I rose from my chair, the same chair I used to sit in as a child, legs swinging while Dad told me bedtime stories over dinner prep. No goodbyes. No theatrics. Just the sound of my heels clicking against the wood floor as I walked away. Behind me, I heard Chloe scoff, so dramatic. But even she sounded unsure. Because I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just left. And in that moment, that exact moment, I knew. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had freed me. From the need to prove anything. From the chains of being the good daughter. From the lie that family always means love. What they didn't realize, the girl they just cut off, was the only one who ever held them together. And what happened next? Let's just say, they'll never forget it. Love, when laced with conditions, is just debt disguised as devotion. I didn't always think my mother hated me. As a child, I thought the silence was just her way. The way she never hugged me after my dance recitals. The way she ruffled Chloe's hair, but never mine. The way she'd say, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Like my very existence was some sort of inconvenience. I told myself she was just strict, busy, tired. But over the years, the excuses wore thin, and the patterns became impossible to ignore. Chloe was the princess. Everything she touched was praised, even if it was broken. Every mistake was brushed off. Every tantrum rewarded. She crashed Dad's car at 17. They bought her a new one. She failed 2 semesters of college. They called it academic burnout and flew her to Italy for emotional recovery. Meanwhile, I graduated magna cum laude, paid my own tuition, got a job at a tech firm, and wired money home every month to help with bills. No one clapped. No one asked how I was sleeping, or eating, or living. Mom just said, "Well, you're the responsible one. You don't need help." I used to carry that sentence like a badge of honor. I don't need help. Until I realized it wasn't praise. It was abandonment dressed up as admiration. When Dad passed, I stepped up. I organized the funeral, paid off part of the mortgage, made sure Mom had groceries while Chloe was busy finding herself in Bali. For months, I worked double shifts, managed Mom's insurance paperwork, and covered utility bills without asking for a cent back. Not because I expected anything, but because I believed somewhere deep down that love meant showing up. That eventually she'd look at me and see what I was worth. I was wrong. The week after the will reading, memories flooded back. Not the sweet ones. The real ones. Like the Christmas mom gave Chloe a brand new iPad and handed me a $10 Walmart candle, still in the clearance sticker wrapping. Or the time I overheard her on the phone with her sister. Camille? Oh, she's not really like Chloe. She's serious. Kind of cold. But she's good with numbers. As if my achievements were character flaws. As if being reliable made me less lovable. But nothing hit me harder than a photo I found in an old family album. It was from a school play. Chloe stood center stage, in costume, glowing under the spotlight. Mom stood beside her, arms wrapped tight around her waist. And there I was, cropped out of the frame. My arm was still visible. Just a sliver of a sleeve on the edge of the photo. They had cut me out. Deliberately. I stared at that image for 10 minutes. And then I burned it. Because I finally understood. I wasn't unloved. I was used. I wasn't a daughter in her eyes. I was a tool. And the moment I stopped being useful, she discarded me. Like I was nothing more than background noise in someone else's spotlight. But what she failed to realize. Backgrounds are where foundations are built. And I was about to build something so strong, so undeniable, that even she wouldn't be able to crop me out again. Some inherit the house. Others inherit the wisdom not to beg for the keys. I stayed gone. No texts. No calls. No awkward drop-ins pretending things were fine. And at first I thought they didn't notice. But then the cracks began to show. Chloe was in over her head before the ink dried on the will. She moved into the house with her fiancé, the same one who once told me I was too intense at a dinner party when I corrected his math in front of friends. They started renovations immediately, tore out Dad's favorite oak floors and installed cold, trendy concrete slabs for aesthetics. She listed Mom's car for sale to make space. She cut off the gardener, fired the cleaning lady, and ignored a leaky pipe in the kitchen because, in her words, how hard can plumbing be? Within 3 weeks, I heard she'd missed the property tax deadline. 2 of Dad's remaining rental clients, the only income source left, threatened to leave due to mismanagement. By week 4, a family friend sent me a photo of the house. The front lawn, once trimmed and edged with tulips I used to plant each spring, was overgrown. The windows looked dirty. The porch light was shattered. But what struck me the most wasn't what I saw. It was what I felt. Nothing. No guilt. No ache. Just a hollow space where obligation used to live. One morning, I got a call from Mrs. Hemsworth, my dad's old accountant and lifelong friend. Her voice trembled as she said, "Camille, I'm sorry. I thought I should let you know. They're struggling. Chloe's made a mess of things. Honestly, everyone thought you'd be the one to take over. You were the responsible one. You always have been." I didn't respond at first. She added quietly, "You should have been the one. Everyone knows it." That stuck with me. Echoed. Not out of pride, but because it proved something I'd always wondered. They all saw it. They just stayed silent. That Saturday, I drove to the cemetery alone. Dad's grave sat on the east side, under the willow tree where the sun reached late. I hadn't visited since the funeral. Not because I didn't miss him, but because it hurt to feel like he left me behind with them. I stood there for a long time, wind nudging the hem of my coat, watching the light shift across his name. And I whispered, "I'm not fighting them. I'm not rescuing them. Not this time. You taught me how to stand, so now I'm standing but not for them." I let the silence settle, then added, "I hope wherever you are you finally see me." On the drive back, I passed by the old neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes. A woman was walking a dog with a stroller in the other hand. And for the first time, I saw my childhood not as a memory but as a survival story. I had grown up in the shadows of someone else's spotlight. Now, the light was gone. And I wasn't chasing it anymore. I was building my own. Sometimes, the most powerful sound isn't a scream. It's the silence that follows your absence. When you grow up being told to keep the family together, you become good at things that go unnoticed. You learn how to stretch a dollar, how to read tension in a room, how to write emails for your father's clients because he never liked all the computer stuff, how to keep the books balanced while your sister overspent the budget, again. But when I walked away from them, I took all that knowledge with me, and for the first time, I used it for myself. I rented a small studio with peeling paint and terrible lighting. It had no air conditioning, but it had sunlight and silence. That was all I needed. I called up 2 old colleagues, women I had worked with during my corporate years. Women who, like me, were passed over, used, or ignored. They knew the grind. They had nothing to prove and everything to build. We started small. Branding services, data analytics for small firms, content planning. Within 2 months, we had 5 clients. By month 6, 14. I worked from morning till midnight. Not out of desperation. Out of freedom. This time, I didn't feel drained. I felt lit from the inside. One of our earliest clients was a logistics firm my family had once mocked. "They're too small time," Mom had said years ago when I suggested partnering with them for Dad's company. Now, that same firm had quadrupled in size and became our biggest account. I didn't mention the family connection. I didn't need to. We did the work. We delivered. We scaled them. They recommended us to 3 other firms. And just like that, the dominoes began to fall. 3 months later, I received an email from Business Growth Weekly. Subject: "We'd like to feature your startup in our Women Who Lead Spotlight." I stared at the screen for a full minute before responding. Not out of surprise, but because I knew this was only the beginning. I started getting tagged on LinkedIn. Camille Donovan helped triple our revenue in 2 quarters. Leadership that listens, adapts, and delivers. Proud to work with this team. I didn't brag. I didn't boast. I just let my work speak for me, in a language my family never bothered to learn. Meanwhile, back home, things weren't going so well. The house Chloe inherited was up for sale, quietly at first, then publicly. A cousin messaged me, "Hey, is everything okay with Aunt Marla and Chloe? I saw their listing. Looks desperate." I didn't reply, but I clicked the listing. Saw the photos. The fancy chandelier had been replaced by a cheaper fixture. Dad's antique bookshelf was gone. The walls looked cold, not just empty, but stripped of identity. There were price cuts every week. Still, no offers. I heard whispers from old neighbors. "Chloe's not as sharp as people thought. Your mom's been asking around about reverse mortgages." But I said nothing. No warnings. No rescue. No, I told you so. Because I wasn't their safety net anymore. I was my own foundation. And here's the thing about building quietly. By the time they notice you've disappeared, you're already too far ahead for them to catch up. They gave me nothing, and still lost everything. The house on Wrenhill Lane used to be a symbol. People would pass it and whisper, "That's the Donovan place." Not because it was flashy, but because it stood for something. My father's pride. His legacy. Stability. Now it was starting to rot from the inside out. The roof had gone untouched through the winter. The tiles were curling like dead leaves. A pipe burst in the basement, flooding the foundation. Power got shut off for 2 days straight in June because Chloe forgot to pay the bill again. I didn't hear any of this directly. But whispers have wings in a small community. The family name started slipping from reverence to ridicule. Chloe had no idea how to manage estate taxes or navigate Dad's residual business contracts. She tried selling off furniture, even some of Mom's jewelry, but couldn't explain the missing paperwork when a buyer asked for verification. She posted a desperate Facebook message looking for a consultant to help her restructure Dad's old company. Nobody responded publicly, but someone screenshotted it and sent it to me, captioned, "Remember when she said you were too serious for business? Look who's serious now." I didn't reply. I didn't laugh. I just saved it. Mom started calling extended relatives. People she hadn't spoken to in years. People she once looked down on, like Aunt Rochelle, who worked 2 jobs after her divorce and was never polished enough for family parties. Now, she was dialing Rochelle like a lifeline. Nobody picked up. Nobody returned her messages. Then one morning my phone buzzed. It was her. My mother. I stared at the screen. I didn't pick up. She called again. And again. On the fifth try, I answered. Not with my voice, but with a text. You said I wouldn't get a penny. And you were right. I never needed one. Then I blocked the number. There was no satisfaction in doing it. Just clarity. A clean line drawn through years of disrespect. Word spread that the house was going into default. Neighbors whispered at the grocery store. One posted a vague tweet. Wild to watch a legacy fall apart in slow motion. Wren Hill isn't what it used to be. Another tagged me in a photo of the front gate with the note torn off the mailbox. I untagged myself. Because I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to circle back and say, look what happened. They were already living in the ruins of what they chose. Mom tried one last thing, the ultimate guilt move.
She emailed me.
Subject. Please talk to me. No message body. Just an attachment, a photo of Dad's grave.
As if that would break me.
But it didn't. Because I had already spoken to him. I'd made peace. And she didn't get to use his memory as a weapon. Their world was crumbling. Not because of me, but because I was no longer holding it up. And when people build kingdoms on the backs of those they call lesser, they're always shocked when the ground disappears. Erased daughters don't disappear. They just learn to rise louder than memory. It started with a LinkedIn repost. Someone from one of our client firms, a VP, shared my story in a corporate leadership group, saying, Camille Donovan's journey is what real resilience looks like. Quiet power, built from scratch. That one post was shared over 2,000 times. Then came the invite. A prestigious women's leadership summit in Chicago. Would you be our closing keynote? They'd cover my flight, hotel, even give me a stipend. But more than that, they wanted my voice. Not for a client. Not behind the scenes. Front stage. Centered. Heard. I almost said no. Old wounds have a way of whispering doubts. But something in me, the version of myself that never needed their validation, said yes. I wore a deep burgundy suit. No brand labels. Just sharp tailoring and quiet confidence. The room was packed. Women from finance, media, health, and tech, CEOs, creatives, mothers, founders. And as I walked to the podium, I didn't shake. Because I wasn't there to prove anything. I was there to be. My speech wasn't full of buzzwords or bullet points.
It was a story.
I told them about growing up as the shadow behind someone else's crown. About bookkeeping without a title. About being the safety net everyone needed. Until they didn't. I didn't name names.
Didn't speak with venom.
But I said this. Sometimes being erased is a gift. You get to rewrite your life in your own ink. You get to stop performing and start becoming. And when you rise, not to get back at them, but to finally see yourself, you realize they didn't break you. They freed you. I looked out into the crowd. Eyes were wet. Hands gripped notebooks. And then they rose. A standing ovation. Thunderous.
Sustained.
Soul deep. Back home, I didn't know this, but someone had recorded the speech and posted a clip online. A neighbor tagged my mother in the comments. She watched it late at night, alone in the dim living room with the curtains drawn. She didn't know I'd find out. But a former friend of hers, one who now followed me, messaged me. Your mom saw the video. She didn't say a word, just stared at the screen like someone had swallowed her breath. I imagined it. Her on that old floral couch. No audience. No applause. Just regret echoing in the silence she built herself. And here's the thing. She never once believed I'd amount to anything without their table. But I'd built my own. And now, the same people she desperately wanted approval from were applauding her daughter.
The daughter she erased.
She used to tell me I was too emotional to lead. Now I was being invited to speak on emotional intelligence in leadership panels across the country. She once said, "You'll always be behind Chloe." Now Chloe couldn't pay off a leaking roof. She had bet everything on the wrong legacy. That night, I received a package at my office. No return address. Inside was a photo, me and my dad from when I was 10, sitting on the front porch, books on my lap. Taped to it was a note. You always were the one who paid attention. It was her handwriting. No apology. No explanation. Just that. And honestly, that was enough. Because now she knew what I'd always known. Power doesn't live in inheritance. It lives in who you become after they stop believing in you. Some visits aren't for reconciliation. They're for release. It had been over 2 years since I last saw the house. The walls that once held my childhood, my sleepless teenage nights, my quiet sacrifices, had become nothing more than faded siding and overgrown hedges. I didn't knock. I didn't park in the driveway. I just stood across the street, breathing in a moment I had waited for without realizing it. Not revenge. Closure. The house looked tired. The white trim was yellowing. The windows streaked. The roses Dad once trimmed like clockwork were now long, wild arms of red and thorn. There was a foreclosure notice tucked halfway under the welcome mat. A welcome mat. Still there, after everything. I walked up quietly and slid an envelope into the old brass mailbox. The letter inside wasn't bitter. It was honest. You gave me nothing. I gave you everything. Now I give you space and silence. Not because I'm angry, but because I finally understand. I was never meant to belong where I wasn't seen. You made your choice. And now I've made mine. This is the last thing I'll ever leave at this house. No signature. Just the clean end of a story. I turned and walked away, my heels soft against the cracked concrete path, my breath steady. Behind me, a curtain shifted. She'd seen me, but she didn't come out.
Not this time.
Later that week, I heard from a former neighbor who still watched the street like a retired detective. She found the letter, he told me. She stood there for a long time, reading it over and over. Then she sat on the porch steps. Just Saturday. He paused. She looked small, Camille. Like she'd finally realized how much she'd lost. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. Because sometimes the greatest power is walking away, not in rage, but in peace. Letting someone sit in the silence they created. That weekend, Mom called my old cell, the number I no longer used. She left a voicemail I would never hear. I imagine it wasn't an apology. She never did those. But I also imagine she was holding the letter in one hand and an overdue water bill in the other. While Chloe scrolled her phone on the couch, still waiting for the world to hand her something she never earned. That was their circle, and I was finally outside of it. Meanwhile, my circle was growing. I'd just signed a lease on a second office location. My assistant was onboarding 2 new interns. Our firm had been featured in 3 more business publications that month. I was building a legacy, not out of spite, but out of the space they once called empty. And that childhood home? It was no longer home. It was a shell. A place I outgrew the second I realized I was never the problem. Sometimes the letter you leave behind isn't for them to understand. It's for you. To know you finally said everything without needing a single reply. Some legacies aren't inherited. They're rebuilt from rubble and risen from silence. The gala hall shimmered with soft gold lighting and navy blue tablecloths. Crystal glasses clinked softly. The theme was voices that change futures. I didn't expect much when I got the invitation. I thought maybe I'd be sitting at a table near the back, a token nod to my company's recent work. But as I walked in, the event director found me instantly. She smiled. "You're our final honoree tonight." I froze. "Philanthropist of the Year," she said. "Your foundation, your journey, it's inspired so many." I stood backstage, just off the velvet curtain, as the MC read my name. "Tonight, we honor a woman who didn't just rebuild after betrayal. She turned silence into strategy, pain into progress, and memory into momentum." People began to clap. Then the applause built. Thunderous, echoing, a rhythm of recognition I never once begged for, but had earned. I stepped into the light. Not the light they thought I'd crawl toward, but the light I had built myself, brick by brick, speech by speech, decision by decision. I took the mic and scanned the room. CEOs, Lawyers, activists, artists, teenage girls who looked up at me the way I once looked up at everyone else, wondering if I'd ever be enough. I didn't cry, but my voice did soften. I stand here not because I won, but because I refuse to stay invisible. And tonight, I'm proud to announce the Donovan Future Fund, named after my father, will support girls who've been told they are too much, too little, or simply not enough. We'll give them tools, mentorship, safety, and most of all, permission to take up space without apology. Flashbulbs erupted. Somewhere in the front, a young girl with tight curls clapped so hard her glasses slipped down her nose. At that same moment, in a house 2 towns away, my mother sat in the dark. Power shut off again. No central heating. Just a candle flickering in the corner, next to bills piled on the coffee table like unpaid sins. She had no one left to blame. No one left to beg. Only Chloe, dozing on the couch, jobless and bitter. And the TV. The gala was airing on the local network. I filled the screen in high definition.
Poised.
Glowing. A crown of earned grace across my shoulders. And as my voice rang out through the speakers, I imagined she leaned forward and saw everything she threw away. She said I wouldn't get a penny. I say in my final voiceover, as the gala fades to black. She was right. I got peace. I got power. I got a future. And now, she gets to remember me like this. Forever out of reach.